Hello, everyone. Welcome into today's webinar, Copilot in Teams, Smarter Meetings and Collaboration, presented by expert technical trainer at Microsoft, Albert Kirkpatrick. My name is Mariela Salinas, and I'll be assisting and moderating today's session. We are in Zoom for today's webinar, and we will be emailing you a copy of this recording after the session. We do encourage participation throughout the session, so please use your chat or that Q&A option for our short dedicated Q&A after the presentation. Microsoft and Educate 360 are so excited to present this webinar today. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to you, Albert.
Thank you, Maria. That introduction puts a lot of pressure on me. I'm now a little nervous. I may have to alter my presentation. I'm fine. But welcome, everyone. Thank you all so much. And for those of you who have been with us in the other two sessions that we've done on Excel and Outlook, hopefully found those valuable, and hopefully you'll find some value in this. As we talk about teams, and teams is one of those ubiquitous things that we all kind of encounter at different levels and different parts of our day. And what I want to explore in this session is a little bit beyond kind of the ordinary. A lot of us use Teams for summarizing meetings or for generating notes or catching us up for things we missed. Those are almost embedded kind of sample prompts that you'll find within Copilot for Teams naturally. But I want to see if we can dig a little deeper and maybe show you some other things you could do with Copilot Teams that you maybe hadn't thought of. All right. But I don't want to assume anything. So we'll start some ground rules. First of all, like the whole thing we talk about with Teams isn't just for people who are technology experts. This isn't something that's just for people who are really good with the technology or really good with the Microsoft tools. The goal of Copilot is to empower everyone, whether you're in sales or R&D or customer service or finance or whatever your role. There's a way that leveraging AI can help make your role easier. And I think of AI as kind of a force multiplier, right? What we want to do is we want to take you and augment you and add to you, create more capacity for you. And we do that by taking some things that are just kind of routine and grinding, kind of time consuming things, and giving them some automation, giving them some capacity so that when you get to bring the best part of you, your expertise, you're bringing it at a point in the conversation where a lot of that fundamental groundwork kind of has already been done. So I want you to think of Copilot as a tool for you. And you can use it not just here or not just in Teams, but you can literally use it everywhere. Um, some feedback I got from some other sessions. I wanted to explain kind of Copilot where it is because you can kind of encounter Copilot in a couple of different places, right? There's Copilot that you can get to either through your Windows taskbar or you can go to copilot.microsoft.com. We often refer to that as Copilot Chat. This is the sort of the personal, non-organizational, non-business version of Copilot. And that's kind of like what you see with other, AI kind of chat front end chatbot engines, or whether it's, you know, ChatGPT or Gemini or any of those other tools. Copilot kind of is the Microsoft implementation of those things. It has some Microsoft specific flair to it, but that's kind of where you encounter those things sort of publicly. Where you really get the benefit, though, of Copilot is organizationally. And this is like the M365 Copilot. That's going to be where I'm starting my conversation today, is we're going to be looking at the M365 Copilot as a tool. We're going to be looking at how we can ground it not just in personal things, but in our work-related content. How can I get my Teams meetings and my emails and a presentation I'm working on and a SharePoint site that I have access to? How can I get that all collaborated on safely and securely? And it's always a topic of conversation sort of in the background, so I'll just bring it to the forefront. How secure is this? How secure is what I'm using Copilot for? Well, if you're using M365 Copilot, you should feel really comfortable that it's built or grounded in the same security that the rest of the Microsoft M365 platform is built on. So everything you're doing in your email or with secure access to Teams or with secure access to documents or anything like that, All of that security applies to Copilot too. The models that we use to enable Copilot to be able to interface or interact with you are never trained using your data. We train those models outside of that. And then your information is just the source material that Copilot looks at and then uses to kind of generate its own content or generate what your responses are. So whether you're worrying about like data sovereignty or governance rules or any kind of organizational policies you might have, using Copilot doesn't skirt around those things, doesn't allow you to circumvent those things. I always tell people sometimes Copilot finds things that you didn't even know you had access to, because if it can find it or it can use or if it has access to it, it's because you already had that access as well. All right. All right, so that's a little warm up. That's a little background. So, what I want you to do, and I encourage you, if you've got teams available, you could pull up your teams on the side because there's really not a lot you could do to kind of break Copilot. That's not a challenge for you, but it's good to sometimes see these things in your own space, in your own environment. You could try some of the things we're going to share with you while you're looking in your own environment. But looking at that team's environment you have up, I want you to close your eyes and kind of imagine. And what I want you to do is I want you to imagine if you had an AI assistant that just sort of shadowed you whenever you were in Teams, besides summarizing a meeting, okay, or catching you up for a meeting you're late for, okay, what would you have it do? You think about all the teams you belong to, all the channels that you are subscribed to, all the chats that are going on in there. What would be helpful for teams, for that AI assisted at teams to allow you to do? All right. So don't answer it right yet, right now. We'll come back to that. But I want you to get that in your mind and think about it because we all have something we need to do. I can't, I think if there was a prize for belonging to the most teams and had the most channels subscribed to, I might be in the running for that at Microsoft. But keeping all that straight and keeping all that information relevant can be a challenge sometimes. I know that AI can help me with this, but the point is, how do I get it to do it? The way you get it to do it is you have to understand the language that AI uses, and that gets you into how to craft effective prompts. The biggest thing that you're going to learn as you work with Copilot more and more is how to get it to understand what you want in fewer steps. But I don't want you to think of having to do multiple iterations of an interaction with Copilot as some sort of failure. It's not. Copilot was engineered to work more like I call it a persona than a piece of technology. Because we think of technology as kind of a binary conversation. I do X, I get Y result. Copilot's a little different than that because it's generating things. It's not searching per se and bringing back information like a search engine. It's actually generating content. So much like an artist, if you give an artist guidelines, like paint me a cityscape, you may get New York, you may get Paris, you may get Seattle, you may get London. There's a lot of different ways to interpret that. And you're basically giving the artist artistic license to interpret what you want. Okay. But if you give that artist more specifics, I want an American city on the East Coast, preferably one in a warmer climate. Well, maybe you'll get a cityscape of Charleston, South Carolina, or someplace like that. So the more you give it, the more effective it can respond to you. Still may require some nuance or some adjustment. That's natural, but you'll get those results if you give it details, if you give it more specifics. And how we look at it is there's four things that a good prompt should have: a goal, context, sources, and an expectation. You've got to tell Copilot what you want it to do. It helps if you tell it why you want to do it. Context is everything. If you're asking it to summarize an email thread or summarize a meeting chat for a review you're going to have with your supervisor, That's one thing. If you're saying you want to do it to post to a channel where the project team is working on it, that's a different thing. If you're going to do an executive briefing and you want a summary for that, that's a third kind of context. It's the same job. You're still kind of summarizing that thread, but why, the context of why you're doing it matters. If there are specific sources you want Copilot to use, tell it that. Copilot has the ability in the M365 environment to look at your work content and web content, or either or neither. You can tailor what it uses to ground your answers. If you have specific documentation, specific examples, specific information that you wanted to use to answer or to create the content you want, give it that. Tell it that. The more you give it, the better and more likely you are to land closer to what your ultimate response is going to be. And then some kind of expectation. Do you want this as a table? Do you want it as a chart? Do you want it as an email? Do you want a 3 bulleted point list? What do you want that output to be? So let's take an example. So this is a Teams prompt. Okay? So the prompt I created, click through here real quick. From the conversation history in this channel about the market research project in any shared files, draft a short announcement for the project team with a headline of 3 to 5 bullets, a loop checklist of next actions with owners and due dates, and 3 suggested at mentions for the owners. Keep the announcement under 120 words and propose a pin-worthy version. That sounds like a mouthful, right? Sounds like a lot. But what I've done is I've given Copilot enough context that it can do what I want it to do. The goal here is to draft the announcement. Draft the announcement with a headline and bullet points, create a loop checklist, and give suggested at mentions. That's the goal. That's what I want out of it. The context is for the project team. So the project team that's in this email thread, that's who I want to create this for. So Copilot understands that and understands that these people are part of this email discussion. So there are some things I can include in there with some foundational assumptions based on that. All right. The sources are the conversation history. So I'm telling it, look at this. Don't look, at other conversations. Don't look in other channels. Look at the conversation history in this channel, and then keep it concise. 120 words, propose a pin-worthy version. All of that gives Copilot some grounding. Okay? So that's an example. Goal, context, sources, expectation. If you put that together in a prompt, Copilot now has enough framework in which to work to get you what you want. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to land exactly where you want it to land on the first try. It might not. I jokingly refer to Copilot sometimes being like what I have to tell when I tell my kids to clean up their room. Sometimes, no matter how much context I give them, it doesn't land exactly where I want that to land, or it doesn't match the image I have in my mind of a clean room. I had to iterate multiple times to get them there. Sometimes Copilot does too, but normally, the more context and the more framework you put around it, the better and more likely you are to land at that expected outcome in the fewest number of iterations. All right. All right. So that's framework. That's concept. And I get it. Albert, we want to hear some examples. So I asked you to imagine some situations that you might want to use. I came up with a couple, and let's see what you think about these. So a lot of times for me in teams, there's discussions going on, and I'm seeing all this information bopping about in a channel. So in this example, the leadership team is talking about an acquisition, and they're having this discussion in a Teams channel. Things keep arising, getting replied to kind of asynchronously. It's hard to get a feel for where the acquisition stands. So what I'll say is I need a clear post to pull all this together, get loop put together and figure out who should be mentioned. And can you get this together in 10 minutes before this group meets? All right. So what's this prompt look like? So first of all, let me show you this, because I've got a pretend user. Okay. Amber. This is Amber's Teams environment. And you can see some chats that Amber has. Here's some of her channels that she belongs, teams and channels, sales and marketing, leadership, operations, production. You can see all those different channels there. What she's looking at, though, is in this leadership channel in the merger and acquisitions communication. So there are a number of different communications that have come in here, but she wants to find, and this is a small sample size. You can imagine this had a bunch of other um, uh, chats or messages that are going on in here. So we want to be able to pull out anything related to this acquisition. So if we pop back here to my prompts, is from the conversations history in the leadership team, in the merger and acquisitions channel, find any posts about the Wingtip Toys merger, and then create three things. A short announcement with a headline of 3 to 5 bullets, a loop checklist of next actions and due dates, and some suggested app mentions. It's that same prompt that I was demonstrating earlier, but now we want to see how this works with live information. So what I'm going to do is grab this. I'm going to copy this prompt, and I'm going to show you a little bit of a trick, because sometimes we want to understand the difference between using Copilot, for example, within a chat. So if I go to a chat that Amber's having with Mario and Sydney, there's Copilot here. That can give me some information within this chat. But if I start going down into the teams and other elements within the channel, I don't get the same capacity or the same capability with leveraging Copilot. So sometimes it's helpful for me to actually use the Copilot M365 app itself. So I'm going to play around with that. And the nice thing is it's always grounded right here in Teams. You can see it over here on the left-hand side. So I'll just click that. It automatically opens up M365, but it didn't take me out of Teams. I'm still here within my Teams environment. So it recognizes I'm Amber, and I'm going to go ahead and paste that conversation in. So I'll click the little run, and we'll watch and see what Copilot does. First thing I want you to notice, and this is really helpful with Copilot, is that it always tells you sources. So it said it found a post, but then it gives me the link to that post. All right. So here's my announcement with a headline. There's the announcement itself. It talks about the merger, leadership is doing. Stay tuned for official communication soon. There's a checklist of things to do with actions, action owners, and due dates. And then who I should at mention. And you'll notice it mentions Kai and Teresa, myself, and Mario. Those are the people that are in that channel. Those are the people that you'll see within that chain. Okay? Those are the people that you'll see within it. Let me go back up here to the merger. There you go. So you can see there's Kai and Mario and myself. And if I expand this out, you'll see Teresa in there too. So it's grounding that information or grounded that response. Now think about where else you can use this. Building that living sort of dynamic space with loops so you could use this collaboratively. Creating a planner. We've got a checklist of sort of activity or action items. We could use that with a checklist. We could use this to update a SharePoint status page, but it gives me capacity here to evaluate or analyze information within an existing channel. Not just summarizing. I could use it to summarize that too, or summarize the thread, but I'm actually going in and evaluating information about a specific topic in a channel. This is really helpful when I'm not sure exactly where it got mentioned, but I know it got mentioned in here. I can ask Copilot to help me pull that out. Think about how much time that will save you, instead of having to go through and look at those individually. All right. Or what about this one? Here I have the sales and marketing folks. They have a team. That team has multiple channels in it. There are often conversations that are happening in different channels about the same thing. So what I'd love to be able to do is go through all the channels within that sales and marketing team, find all the comments or all the content related to a specific thing, and then pull that together. So I could summarize, for example, for key stakeholders, what information is going to be most relevant or land most valuable for them. So same thing. I'm going to create a prompt and I'm going to ask it, hey, can you scan for activity across these channels? And I'll give it the channels that I want in the sales and marketing team. Market research, marketing, sales in general. Use posts in these channels to output a one-page roll-up with status, highlights, and decisions, a risk blockers table with owner, severity, ETA, and dependency, and a short what we need from leadership section, and end with a suggested post template that I can paste as a single channel update. Now, once again, I'm using prompts that are fairly verbose and fairly lengthy. And I did that intentionally because that's what I'm trying to, or I want people to see, is that you don't have to be afraid to give Copilot a lot of work to do. Copilot's good at that. It's good at taking a lot of a lot of information and forgot to switch over. Um, is good at taking a lot of information, a lot of different tasks, and sorting them out and doing them together and coming up with now a comprehensive list, a comprehensive set of actions that we can perform. All right. So we're letting it run through here, but you can see there's the prompt I ran. There's the place where it looked. It told me it looked in the different channel it looked in or channels it looked in. Here's my one-page roll-up with status, highlights, and decisions. Here's my risk and blockers table, what the risk blocker is, the owner, the severity, and an ETA for that, what we need from leadership. Now you notice I didn't have to define what a risk blockers table looked like. It's learned or it's modeling helps it understand that. It knows what common business terms are. You don't necessarily have to define them, but if this isn't what I meant, then maybe I would have to define it and give it a more defined example. That's that artistic license we talked about. Copilot knows things, but it may not know how to do things exactly the way you want them done. All right. Great. So let's look at another example. One last one. Okay. Imagine you're asked for procedural guidance on, say, a safety issue. The information is in a channel you subscribe to. There's documentation in there, but you'd have to read through all that. Let's say there was a safety manual. You don't have to go through a 400-page safety manual to come up with a triage procedure. But you know who can do that really quickly is Copilot. So Copilot can help you retrieve that information quickly and effectively through the environment, through the infrastructure, through the discussion. So my prompt is going to be from chat and files in the production within the frontline operations channel about our safety updates, generate a triage playbook with step-by-step actions, if then decision points, owner and role for each step, links to reference docs, and a one-screen cheat sheet of the top 10 fixes. That's a lot. All right, that's a lot. But once again, Copilot can do a lot. So I ask it to generate that for me. And what it will do, it'll search through that channel. There's the reference to the channel. There are my step-by-step actions. That's my action plan. My if-then discussion points shows me the documents it referenced. Uh, and there's a one-screen cheat sheet for the top 10 quick fixes we have based on the content in those documents. So what I'm trying to get you or stimulate you to think about is Copilot is eager and anxious to lift heavy things. It's more than just what are the key points of this? Where was I mentioned? Are there any items assigned to me? Those are great prompts and they're very valuable. But can it do more? Can we push the limits of what Copilot is capable of? And the answer is yes. Copilot is incredibly versatile. It's incredibly adept at being able to take complex actions and generate output of it from it. And more importantly, think about how much time this is going to save you. Awesome. All right. So those are some tips, and hopefully those have stimulated or sort of triggered some ideas for you. What's coming up next? There's a lot of opportunity for you to dig even deeper, and so I'm going to pass it back to Mariella for her to talk about where you can go next if you want to learn more.
Awesome, Albert. Thank you so much for that expert walkthrough. I went ahead and threw in a couple of links in the chat, but I did want to remind everyone that if they missed out on any part of the session, we'll be sharing a recording with all of you in an email after the webinar. And you will also be receiving some fun follow-ups in those emails as well. So go
Mhm.
right ahead and click on those links to take a peek at our other webinars that you may have missed out on. And then also, if you want to check out any of our Copilot solutions, please go right ahead and check that out. I know we had a couple of questions kind of trickle in, so I'm going
Okay,
to
great.
field them over to you for the last 3 minutes of this
Sure.
webinar. Curtis asked, will this webinar discuss expanding knowledge base of M365 Copilot? For example, anything having to do with Copilot Studio? Great question.
Mm. That's a little beyond our scope here, but yeah, this that gets into, like creating your own. You can always share your own knowledge. You can always add files, even if you're doing something simple within Teams. If you wanted it to use like a reference document when it was generate, like you kind of saw what I did there in that last prompt with generating like a safety guideline. You always have the ability to add your own content. You just click the little plus sign there in Copilot, excuse me, prompt window, or if it's something that's within your OneDrive, you can just forward slash and you can say based on the content here or based on our best practices here. You can always add that content. If you want to ground things, from a more organizational, more systemic standpoint, then yeah, you could do that with like Studio or some of the other tools. And then if we want to go in further, you can start building custom agents to respond to whatever business circumstances you have. That's part of some of the things that Mariella probably has shared with you in the link, some of the other courses that we have available for you here at New Horizons. So I encourage you to check some of those out.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Alrighty, we have a couple more. I had a
Sure.
couple have to do with direct access, so I'm going to just loop those all together. How do I give Copilot direct access to my team's environment? Great
Hmm.
question.
Yeah. If you have, it's about licensing. If you have an M365 license, then Copilot will have access to that because it'll be tied to your organizational email, your Entra ID tenant. There are different licensing modes for Copilot. So if you're not seeing Copilot show up like that, like mine did in that environment, it may be that you don't have the right licensing. I would check with your Copilot administrator and ask them what kind of license you have and make sure you have like the full M365 license. But if you're not seeing that, that's most likely the cause.
Fantastic to know. Great to know moving forward.
Hmm.
Alrighty, and then I believe this will be the last question since we have 1 more minute. Um, You mentioned Loop. Does Loop have access to Copilot? Is it available for the public/gov space? Great question.
Uh, okay, so I'm always cautious when someone mentions Gov because Gov has its own kind of um, uh, uh, its own kind of sort of criteria. But what you can do is Copilot has access to Pages, and Pages is kind of its collaborative space. What I often will do is take things from Pages and input that into Loop content. But Copilot does have a Copilot in Loop, excuse me, Loop does now have a Copilot in Loop feature. So once again, it should be integrated into the Loop app. If you're not seeing it there, once again, that might be a licensing issue that you'd want to check out. As far as the Gov space, we'd have to check on that. it should be available in that because most of the M365 stuff is fairly consistent between com and gov. But stepping out on a limb, I'd be kind of hesitant to say that right now.
Appreciate it. That is fantastic direction, though. So hopefully that clears up a little bit of info for you. And I believe that'll be it since we are a little in a minute over. Apologies,
Okay.
everyone. But I did want to just remind everyone we had a couple questions. You will absolutely be getting a copy of this recording with you in an email after the webinar. So please take a peek at that and please go ahead and check out our other sessions where Albert was being amazing and just doing the best.
Oh my
So
goodness.
thank you
You're
so
too
much,
kind.
everyone. Oh, that's all you, please, Albert. Thanks everyone for joining us today. Hope you all had some fun takeaways from not only this session but the series.
Mhm.
And we hope you have a fantastic rest of your week.
Awesome. Thank you all. Take
Alrighty.
care.
Bye, everyone.